What's up, fellow pre-meds, future doctors out there? Applause for you already. Oh, and my replay viewers. How can I forget about my replay viewers? Those are the people who, watch me after I'm gone. I'm good. Hey, Docs Outside the Box. How you doing? Thanks for the hearts already. Hi. So I'm going to get to it. Because there's a lot to do. You're dehydrated. You should drink something. You really should drink something. So. All right. So I'm going to get to it today because we have a lot to cover. And this is a topic that people have been asking me about. Asking me to cover, asking me questions about. And so I decided I was going to do some investigation. But before I get into that, let me introduce myself. Allow me to reintroduce myself. All right. My name is Dr. Renee Volney-Darko, and I am an OBGYN, which means I'm a doctor who delivers babies. And I also take care of non-pregnant women as well. Now, when I'm not taking care of patients, I specialize in helping pre-meds to overcome challenges, the challenges of getting into medical school, which, we're going to talk about potentially one of those today, one of the new challenges that occurred today. So, now, if you are watching this live or on the replay and you like what's going on, go ahead and tap the screen. And that will let me know that you like what I'm saying, and you'll give me some hearts. And if you feel so that you need to share this information, which I hope you will, okay? Go ahead and tap the bald-headed man and share that with your Periscope or your Twitter followers, okay? Now, let's get to it. So today's topic, as you can see, is about the AACOMAS policy change with regards to repeated coursework. And a lot of people have been asking me about, what does this mean? What does this mean about me getting into medical school? You'll find out what's up with that in a second, Docs Outside the Box. But essentially, what has happened is that basically, the American Association of Colleges of Osteopathic Medicine Application Service, or AACOMAS, has basically come out with a new policy that says that any repeated courses that you take, thanks for inviting your followers, Docs Outside the Box, any repeated courses that you take are going to count towards your GPA. And thanks for the hearts. And what that basically means is, let me read the official statement so that way I get it correct, okay? So, effective May 2017, AACOMAS will include all course attempts in the GPA calculation. This change applies to students matriculating into 2018 to 2019 academic year. In the event of multiple attempts of the same course, AACOMAS will no longer drop initial course attempts from the GPA calculation. So this is a formal statement that they have on their website. And if you go to the AACOMAS website, you will see that. So that basically means if you are applying this coming year, 2017, and you plan on matriculating, in the year of 2018, 2019 academic year, that this is going to apply to you. So let me talk about that in a little bit of detail. What that basically means, let's go back actually. Let's go back to when I applied to school. Okay, when I applied to school, if, for example, you took a course, and let's say you took organic chemistry, okay, because everybody loves organic chemistry, right? Let's say you took organic chemistry and you got, you got a D, all right? And you figured, you know what, I really can't, keep this D on my transcript like this because, it looks bad to medical schools to have a D in organic chemistry. So at that point, you just decide that you're going to take the class over. And when you take it over, you do pretty well. You get an A minus or whatever. Okay? Now, when I applied to medical school, what would happen is when they calculated the GPA, that original D would be dropped. Okay? So those credits would not count towards the GPA. However, the repeated course, that grade would count towards the GPA. Now what AACOMAS is saying is, it doesn't matter. Yes, those were the days. Now AACOMAS is saying it doesn't matter if you repeated the course, that initial course grade is still going to count in the GPA calculation. Okay, so that's what that means. So, what are the implications of that? Okay, what are the implications? Because that's the main question that I get, right? Especially from the non-traditional students. What is the implication? What does that mean? So I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means, what the implications are of that, and then I'm going to give you some strategies as a traditional pre-med as well as a non-traditional pre-med in terms of what you need to do in order to kind of consider that this new policy is going to be in effect as of May 2017. Okay? So, all right. Let's start with why. Why is this happening? So I actually called AACOMAS myself. I called them this week and basically said, look, I help a lot of pre-med students. I've been helping pre-med students for well over 10 years with their applications to medical school. And, I'm starting to get this question. And my question is, why is this change occurring? And so the representative, he was very nice, and investigative reporting, that's what I did, yes. The representative was very nice. And, he wasn't able to give me, kind of the formal, long, drawn-out answer. But what he basically said was that that AACOMAS felt that it should be more transparent in terms of reporting the GPA calculation, which basically means, they want to give the entire picture of the GPA calculation when a student basically, submits their AACOMAS application. And so that was the reasoning that he gave me. Now, I will tell you this, that regardless of the GPA application, the schools will still get your transcript, right? They'll still get your transcripted grade. So even if the policy stayed the same, the schools would still know everything. So the process is already transparent, but I guess they felt that this was a little more transparent in that, they would just keep the calculation a little more, I guess, accurate. So that was the reasoning that they gave me. So moving on, how will this work? Well, it's very simple. You basically will go into your AACOMAS application. You'll input your course, input the grade, and then if you repeated it, you'll simply indicate that you repeated it, and you'll put in the grade that you got when you repeated it. And that's it. That's all you really have to do. And the AACOMAS system will basically calculate the rest. That's what it will do. And here's another question that I've gotten. Even if the course is taken at a different school, for example, let's take organic chemistry again. You took organic chemistry at University A and you got a D. You took organic chemistry at University B, 6 years later maybe, I don't know, and you got an A. Then yes, that still counts. It doesn't matter that they number their courses differently. The point is that it is an organic chemistry course and that you have retaken it. And so you need to indicate the course, the grade, and whether or not you repeated it, so that way the AACOMAS system can then calculate your GPA. Now, your GPA on your transcript, certainly may look different than your GPA on the AACOMAS application. Okay, when you finally submit your AACOMAS application, your GPA will pop up. It will populate. Okay, now you have to try to understand the AACOMAS GPA calculation, because if you don't understand it, you're going to be very confused. Remember that if your school is the type of school that drops that grade, okay, for example, if you take organic chemistry semester 1 and don't do well, and then you repeat it semester 2 and then you do well, if your school drops the semester 1 grade, then your GPA is not going to look like the one that AACOMAS has populated, okay, has calculated, all right, because they are going to count that anyway. They're going to count that grade with the number of credits that were attempted with that grade, that initial grade. So you have to understand the grading system, and you can find the grading system on the AACOMAS website. So it's really, really important. Let's see. The other thing is, if your GPA, I know a lot of West Coast schools have their GPAs out of 5 instead of out of 4, right? So, they just have a different scale. So the AACOMAS application doesn't use the GPA out of 5 scale. They use it out of 4. And so they explain to you exactly how to kind of calculate that for yourself, so that you can see, once the AACOMAS grade is populated, what that GPA is going to look like. All right. So you can't rely on your GPA on your transcript to look exactly like the GPA on the AACOMAS application. Let's see. Courses that don't necessarily count towards the GPA are courses that don't have a grade. Okay. Courses that are like pass fail, no credit courses. If you audited a course, for example, I don't even know if they audit courses anymore, but if you audited a course, like, those grades won't count. Pass fail, I said. Withdrawals also will not count. And AP classes, that's another one. Advanced placement classes that you may have taken in high school. So they may count towards your graduation, credits towards your graduation. However, they won't necessarily count towards your GPA, because there's no number or letter to correlate that with the AACOMAS GPA calculation. So how is the GPA broken down on the application? Well, the GPA is broken down by overall GPA. So they take everything and they calculate it together. But then there are some subcategories. And the way that they do that is they literally break it down by college year. So freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year. So they break down each one of those and say, okay, this is the GPA that you got in each one of those years. They even break it down by term. So they may say, in this semester you got this, in this semester you got that GPA, and break it down by term. The other way they break it down, if you are in a post-bac, they will also break it out into, this is your post-bac GPA, okay? So that way people know, okay, well, during the post-bac year, or post-bac years, this is the GPA that the person actually achieved. Same thing with graduate courses. If you took graduate courses, they will break that down into a graduate GPA. All right. And then they also break down your GPA by course subject. All right. So those are kind of categories. For example, what's your science versus non-science GPA kind of thing. And I don't know if they break it down even further into, this is your chemistry GPA or biology GPA. But that, again, is something that you can find on the AACOMAS website, or you can call them for yourselves to ask. So that's how all of that will work once you go to apply for medical school through the AACOMAS application. Now, how does this affect you? And honestly, I have to tell you, there are people who are pretty concerned about how it's going to affect them. I will say that, especially because I will say this, the application process may become more competitive than it has been in the past. Okay. And I say that because now you're calculating all of the grades, good and bad, into a GPA. And if law of averages and things like that, that the lower numbers bring down the higher numbers, and higher numbers, hopefully will bring up lower numbers. So if you're calculating, the D's, the F's, the C's, into a GPA, whereby before you excluded those, then yes, your overall GPA, in comparison to years past, are going to look much different. Your GPAs going forward are going to look a little bit lower than the previous policy GPA calculation. The other thing is non-traditional students will probably be affected the most, because non-traditional pre-meds tend to be pre-meds who are either taking post-bac or graduate courses. And the reason they're doing that oftentimes is because their undergraduate grades are not as stellar. Okay. But remember, all is not lost, because while you do have that overall GPA where everything is calculated, you still have the breakdown. So if you are a post-bac student, you will have a post-bac GPA. And if you're a graduate student, you will have a graduate GPA. So hopefully that will be a saving grace for our non-traditional students out there. Now, that being said, yes, again, will it be a little more competitive, maybe even a little bit more difficult in terms of the application process? It might. I mean, only time will tell. So let's move on to some strategies. What are some strategies that you can use basically to, potentially help with this policy, with this new policy, overcome the challenge of this policy? So let's start with a traditional pre-med student. So if you're a traditional pre-med student, basically you're, 18, 17 years old once you get into college, and you're in college right now, then what you should do is, and I've talked about this in previous Periscopes, study smarter, not harder. And if you don't know what that means, you need to go back and look at my Periscope on study smarter, not harder. But basically, that means that you need to be able to really focus on studying in such a way where you get the best grades. You're not in high school anymore. There's, the cramming, pretty much that's out the window. You need to plan. You need to get enough sleep. You need to do the things that are going to get you to the point where you have a really good grade. Okay. The other thing is you need to, and I might get some flack for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. You need to withdraw early from a class if you think that things are not going to go well. Now, most schools, in my understanding, if you withdraw early enough, the grade or the course doesn't even appear on your transcript. If you wait to withdraw after a certain date, then you get a withdrawal incomplete, which that does end up on your transcript. Now, the withdrawal incomplete doesn't get calculated into your GPA. As I said, remember, if you don't have a grade, then they can't count it towards your GPA. However, it still is on your transcript. And so again, the schools are still going to see your transcript, and you don't want to have a bunch of withdrawal incompletes on your transcript. Okay. So if you can withdraw early from a class, withdraw. Okay. Because that's an indication that you're not going to do well. And if you don't do well and you get a grade, well, then that grade is going to be calculated into the GPA. Also, you need to think about spacing out your classes, spacing out those classes that have, a big burden of work. So if like, okay, well, I don't want to take, organic chemistry and physics at the same time, for example. I don't know. People do it all the time, but, it may or may not work for you. If that doesn't work for you, then don't do it. The point of going to these classes is, one, understanding what the material is. And if you're not getting that great of a grade, then obviously it's because you're not understanding the material. So if you need a little more time to do that, a little more spacing between courses might actually do you some good. So space out those courses if you think that they are going to cause you to have, a grade that really is just not one that you want medical schools to see. All right. And then obviously you need to understand the GPA calculation. You need to understand it because, if you don't understand the calculation, then you're going to end up taking classes. And then once you get to your application, you're going to figure out that, oh, wait, maybe I shouldn't have taken my classes this way. Maybe I should have, held out and taken this class another time so I could have gotten a better grade. So you need to understand that. Now for non-traditional pre-meds, you're kind of already there, okay, where, your undergraduate courses may not have been the best courses. So we're going to make the best out of this situation, okay? First thing is the best strategy that I can tell you right now, right? Because we know GPA is easy to bring down, hard to bring up, okay? However, it's not impossible to bring it up. It's not impossible to bring it up. So what you want to do is, if you're going to retake some courses, obviously retake them. But if you're taking additional courses, more advanced courses, see if you can take courses that are 4, maybe even 5 credits. Now, I know there aren't a lot of 5-credit classes out there, but there are some. And if you can take those courses, you could potentially, especially if you get an A, right? Because that's really what you're going for. You want to get an A. If you can take those courses, you can get an A, then you can kind of dilute out a little bit some of those grades that weren't as stellar. So try to take courses that are going to give you a lot of credit. So your 2 and 3 credit courses, they're helpful, but you would have to take so many of them in order to dilute your grade. Now, that is another strategy that you could use is, okay, well, you could take more 3 credit courses than you needed to take. But again, that takes time. That's a financial commitment. So you need to think about that as well. Ensure that your repeat courses, that you're getting A's in them. Yeah, A's. At this point, you gotta get A's. I always say that your story has to arc, okay? So if your story didn't start out great, you don't want to plateau. Your story has to arc. It has to peak, okay? To say, well, things weren't that great, but now they're really, really great. And now I'm at the point where I'm ready. And so that's what your transcript, your whole application has to say. Your application has to say, you know what, maybe you weren't ready in the beginning, but you are ready now. So you don't want to plateau to say, well, things haven't really changed and they're pretty much the same. It's like, okay, well, if your story hasn't changed, then, why should we consider you as an applicant? All right. So, ensure that those repeat courses that you're doing much better. Also, don't do repeat courses where in which you've already done well. If you've gotten, let's say, a B+ in something, don't try to go for an A. You got a B+. If you're going to repeat a course that, that needs repeating. So, maybe you got a C or a D in it or an F in it. Those are the courses that you really want to repeat. Okay. And then same advice as for your traditional pre-meds. For your non-traditional pre-meds, withdraw early. If you see things are not going well, if you run into a family issue, if you, for whatever reason, you realize, this course, not right now. Withdraw as early as possible, especially for non-traditional students. You don't want to have withdrawal incompletes on your transcript. You cannot afford to do that. You cannot afford to do that. So it's either you're going to take the course, you're going to do well, or you're not going to take the course at all. No W's for you. No. Okay? And then look at the schools, look for schools that have a significant percentage of non-traditional pre-meds in terms of enrollment into their programs. Those programs tend to be very non-traditional student friendly. And, I think that part of the strategy is something that's really, really important because, you want to increase your chances of getting in. And what better way than to say, okay, well, what school likes non-traditional students the most, and make sure that you at least apply to those schools. And then lastly, of course, you need to understand, just like the traditional pre-med student, you need to understand the the GPA calculation. You need to understand that. Especially as a non-traditional student, you need to kind of plot out, okay, well, if I get an A in this class, what will my GPA look like? If I get a B in this class, what will my GPA look like? And you need to start calculating, because once you understand the calculations, then you can kind of plot out your plan, your strategy, so that you can get the best GPA calculation possible. So those were the strategies for non-traditional and traditional pre-med students. We kind of talked about why AACOMAS is doing this. They want to be a little more transparent. I think they're transparent already, considering that the transcript actually goes to the schools. I don't know that the GPA calculation makes them more transparent, but it is what it is. Now, I'm going to give a little bit of commentary of my own, just to kind of give my 2 cents on this particular policy. Now, I will say this. The allopathic schools, basically AMCAS, the allopathic medical school application process has done this for years. So it's not new. Okay, it's not a new thing. It may be new for osteopaths, but it's not new. I know everybody's kind of up in arms about it, but it's really not a new thing. Now, I have my own kind of reasons for thinking that, other reasons that they may have changed this policy, but, without speaking directly to AACOMAS about my own theories, I won't necessarily spread them here. However, I will say this. I will say that the osteopathic profession, which is my profession, I'm an osteopath, the osteopathic profession, has, at least in my view, prided itself on non-traditional students, on accepting non-traditional students. And that this looked like something that, they were really proud of because, it was basically in the spirit of Andrew Taylor Still, A.T. Still, which, if none of you know, he is the founder of osteopathic medicine, or the father of osteopathic medicine. And he himself, he was an allopathic physician who, through his experiences, realized that he just wanted more, or a different approach to medicine. And I think in the spirit of that, non-traditional students kind of bring the same thing, right? You bring a different experience. Oftentimes, you've graduated, sometimes you have families, sometimes you've worked, you've traveled, you've done a lot more things than someone who's gone straight from high school to college than to medical school. So I think, in that spirit, I would hope that the osteopathic profession continues to accept non-traditional students, and I don't see why they wouldn't. My only fear, obviously, is that overall GPA, it's a number. It's very easy to weed people out with one number. I'm a little reassured because of the breakdown. Like I said, the post-bac GPA as well as the graduate school GPA. That's another number that they can kind of, weed people in and out if they need to. But I would hope that over time that the overall GPA doesn't become this thing, this very important thing, so important that it negates kind of every other thing, every other experience that a non-traditional student could bring to the table and bring to the profession. I certainly was a non-traditional student. So, I think I brought, a lot to the table. And I know so many other non-traditional students. The oldest person in my class was 50 years old. She's practicing today. And there was such a wide age range of people in my classroom. And I can tell you their experiences definitely made my medical experience so much more. And so I'm hoping that, that ACOM basically passes this along to the osteopathic schools so that they can continue to bring the tradition of non-traditional students to the table when they are deciding on applications. So with that, that's all I have to say today. And, hopefully you students out there take heed and, really think about your strategy going forward when you're applying to medical school, particularly with this change. But I am sure that you will all do well. Again, if you have a strategy, that's really, really important to be able to kind of plan out your future. So with that, thanks for listening and watching, I guess. Again, if you are watching the replay, thanks for watching the replay. And go ahead and tap the screen if you liked anything that I said and share out with your viewers. Also, I do have some other strategies, okay, that I don't necessarily cover here, but they're in my bio. So if you would, once this is over, go ahead and click my bio and you'll see a tiny URL. If you click the tiny URL, that will bring you to a page that will allow you to get strategies straight to your inbox. Okay? With that, hope you guys have a great day. Bye.